Hi everyone, welcome to the October 2nd AI Conformance Working Group meeting. And please be mindful of the code of conduct, be respectful for each other. And I'm going to post the link of the agenda in the chat so that everyone can follow along, and feel free to put your name in the attendee. Does someone wants to take the note? If you do, please put your name under the note taker. All right. So we can get to the first topic. The first announcement is about the self-certification for AI conformance. We have published the instructions linked here. This has more details about the process of how do you submit your result. And if you have more questions about the process, feel free to pin us in the Slack channel or send us an email. The second announcement is about testing. So I know that some folks are already interested in starting to think about how do we do automated testing, or discuss how do we do self-certification with some testing. So I have created a GitHub project for tracking those test-related discussions here. I've also updated that in the README of the working group repo. So if you want to take a look at that discussion, you can also follow along there. The third item is from Rita. Rita, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, this is more for awareness. So just FYI, we've had some discussions in the device management working group with the DRA contributors on September 30th, and we discussed whether or not CDI enablement should be part of the Kubernetes conformance. And the consensus right now is no, since CDI is a container runtime config and not required by all the DRA drivers. And that we think that we should continue to track these DRA related requirements as part of this AI conformance program. All right. And let us know if you have concerns or feedback. Thanks.
Janet, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
I think you're muted, Janet.
Thanks. I was talking. So the next topic on the agenda is about formalizing the process for how we define new requirements and added that to the conformance. And then also, how do we graduate from should to must? So for that, I started a doc for discussion. Let me post the link in the chat as well. So on this doc, everyone in the working group should have common access to the doc. If you don't, let me know. So I want to briefly talk about this doc, and we can have some discussion, and then we can also move the discussion offline by commenting in the doc. And I think eventually want to get on some agreement among us, and also SIG architecture and SIG testing, who are both the sponsoring SIGs of our working group. So the process I'm thinking about is that the first step is that we propose a new requirement in the repo, which is already what we are following. And the second step is about how do we decide when we are going to accept the requirement, the idea that I have here is that we can follow the lazy consensus process. Basically, after a certain amount of time, after the requirement was proposed, if there's no objection or no concerns from the community, we assume that this is accepted. And this is also trying to encourage discussion and focus on technical instead of on voting, so that we ensure that the best technology is adopted. And then I think in this case, there are also some open questions around this. For example, do we need approval from owning SIGs and SIG architecture, which is the process that has been followed by the Kubernetes conformance test? And the current proposal is that we will reach out to them if we cannot reach consensus, and we need to bring it to them to get their input and guidance. But we can also discuss that in the doc for how we want to do this. And then for graduating from should to must, we think that one reasonable ask could be that because we want to eventually have automated tests for AI conformance requirements, at least for the musts. So for graduation, the should, from should to must, it should have automated test in place. And then the third open question is that is it expected that all should will eventually become must? And then I think our thinking for now is that yes, but again, open to discussion from the community. And then the next step is that we formally document this requirement in the CMCF repo, and then we have a test design for the requirement, and then we implement the test for that requirement. And then there's also a step for moving from self-assessment to automated testing. That's our end goal. And then for that, we have a target deadline for shooting for 136 to have automated testing for all the existing musts. And then for 137, we're shooting for having all the new must have automated testing. And so that's the gist of the proposal, but feel free to make a comment in the doc or discuss further. This is not final. This is just an initial proposal. And we have a hand. Please go ahead.
Hey, Jeremy. So I think on the first point, right, I think we should probably talk to SIGARCH because the proposal is differing from how Kubernetes conformance works, where there is a group that owns the conformance. And I think I've seen SIGARC folks, SIGARC chairs express positively that they want to follow that model. So I suggest we talk with SIGARCH on that one, on the first one. Owners versus lazy consensus point. On the second one, there is a proposal for two things, right? Whether we should have graduation requirements from the beginning or later. If we are leaning towards all shoulds should always go to a must, then we should have the graduation requirements earlier, and we should be more careful in what we are even proposing as shoulds. Like, for example, if we start adding shoulds that are still dependent on projects that are being worked on or KEPs that are not done, how do we navigate that, right? Because something could fail. So from that perspective, we should be more careful in what we are proposing as shoulds. Just random thoughts on the 3 points you raised.
Mario?
I mean, it is always a living process, right? So yes, we should be careful what shoulds are proposed and how shoulds move, but in general, it's an evolving process. So we can always also vote to remove a should if it becomes impractical or not sufficiable. And regarding consulting SIG Arch, I mean, in my opinion, the job of the working group is to come up with an initial set of conformance program points. So I by accepting this charter that we have and where it's written down, SIG Arch basically handed over the responsibility for those topics to us. I agree we should consult with SIG Arch if there are topics which are failing in a lazy consensus, and if they are not, or if there is a bigger discussion around this, but I would not move to SIG Arch for everything, because then we could basically also do it in SIG Arch.
Yeah, I think like what I'm saying is I'm okay with the proposal, but I think we should not just decide it unilaterally here. We should have that discussion with the SIGARCH and find what the right boundary is.
Oh yeah, sure. So basically, once we are on one page, the idea is to take this to SIG Arch and to SIG testing, because they are the sponsoring SIGs.
Yeah, and I still feel that like we should have a conformance owner list. Happy to debate that with SIGARCH. And on the first point you made, Mario, I agree. Then we should be more flexible in saying shoulds always become must. Yes, that is the goal, but we should clarify that in some cases it may not happen, and we shouldn't be worried about backing out of something we are.
Yeah, the point about all should will become must is aspirational when the should was proposed. When we propose a should, we expect at some point it will become a must, but it's not that it's going to always become a must. If things change in the future, then we might need to retire it.
Fair point. I think we should just clarify that.
Rita raised a question about whether there's any Kubernetes conformance got removed.
I mean, I can answer directly. Maybe also, like I do remember I was in the early batch of sys benchmark contributors, and we had some items that, like after a while, maybe based on feedback from the community, did not make sense anymore, or based on changes. For example, I don't know, PSPs would have been recommended, and at some point PSPs were deprecated. I'm not sure if KSS conformance has anything like that, but we do in this conformance have things like the DRA requirements. If at some point there is a separate conformance test for those, or they get like into KSS conformance, we might need to kind of remove them from ours. So like, we don't want to duplicate anything. So I would at least keep that road open, even if it's just an exception. Similar to how Mario and Mona were, like it's aspirational, as you said. I think that's a it's a good way to phrase it.
I also want to add to this. I think there's also a major difference between Kubernetes conformance and this conformance program, because for Kubernetes conformance, it's more or less following the API. So in theory, if a feature that has an API endpoint which needs a conformance test would move out of Kubernetes because they removed the feature, or the features being removed or something like this, this would theoretically also mean that the conformance requirement would move out. But I think the background on how conformance in Kubernetes is structured is vastly different than how we do it here, because we don't have for everything API endpoints that we can just test.
Right. Any more comments about the process or thoughts, proposals? Okay, let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is about the AI conformance tests. There's an issue about discussion about the test tool. So there's a proposal for creating a tool for running AI conformance tests. I think it's a good starting point, and I think that we can potentially have the contributor put the testing tool in the working group repo for us to start doing some experimental or staging ways to do AI conformance automated test. But this is not going to be used for self-certification. This is only for us to move towards the automated AI conformance. And I think this has some potential, and I'm also experimenting on my side for how could I potentially leverage LLM for the non-deterministic or qualitative requirements. So that's something we can all experiment in this repo. And I think we probably need to talk to the SIG architecture and SIG testing for advice if we can just put that staging test in our repo. Any more thoughts from the audience?
Did you mention like using AI to measure like some of the qualitative stuff? I
Yeah,
wonder if there's any policy around that in Kubernetes community.
policy. And I am not aware of that. Have you seen something like that?
Yeah, there is a thread in the CNCF maintainer circle channel. And some people gave some examples from Istio and Hotel. Let me find some links. Maybe like, that can be good reference.
Yeah, we can follow up on that. This is only experimental. We don't have to use that. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? And I wonder, how is everyone doing with the self-certification Does anyone have any questions they want to ask or any challenges?
So I think maybe it's worth talking about what is acceptable as evidence? Should it be like official product doc? Should it be like logs from a run where you install the product and demonstrate that you are meeting a requirement? I think it should be both. Did we clarify that somewhere?
Mario?
Yeah, I will take over the screen for a sec. So as Janet mentioned, the restructuring pull request was moved into the repository. There is currently in the instructions so the documentation the documentation requirement is currently that it points to a publicly available documentation. However, written in the file, if it's not a released software or a software that is not released yet, you can also send documentation as file to the when you submit it. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Because either the files are in the pull request, which make them then public anyway, or if you have a link to the documentation, which also makes them public. So I think, so in my opinion, both is viable.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a case where, oh, okay, I meet this requirement, but I need to install this or configure my product in a certain way, and then
Yeah.
hence, then I can run some command to prove that yes, this goal is met. Now, not every scenario may be in the documentation, right?
So we move, for example, we move so I'm now speaking with the vendor head on, right? So we move everything in our documentation. So we basically take the points that we have in the AI conformance and we will publish everything in our documentation because we think that even if it is a specific, if it is a specific thing that I need to configure to fulfill this, our customers would probably want to use it, so they would benefit if they can read it up somewhere. So that's the reason why we said like we put everything in our documentation.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. But yeah, we should, I think, still leave the room open for stitching it and showing it.
Yeah, exactly. I would basically also leave the room open that you just commit it into the PR.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will give back to you, Janet.
Thanks. All right. Let me share again. The next topic is about on continuing the discussion of the shoulds. So let's continue follow up on the discussion we had last time. This one is about the storage for high performance storage. So we said that I'm going to reach out to the SIG storage for input. I reach out to the SIG storage chairs and TLs, got +1 from them. They think that this is a good idea. And then I also want to reiterate that the main reason behind this is that the storage class provides some abstraction. So I think it's a good way for providing some portability. So that's why this is proposed as a should. And if there's no more questions, we can move on to the next one. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this question was discussed at some point in time, but is there any concrete numbers we're looking at for high IOPS, or are we just saying high IOPS?
Yeah, we're just saying high IOPS, because we don't want to focus on benchmarking. We just want to focus on standardizing. So I think it's up to the platform to decide how they determine that. If there's no more questions, I'm going to move on to the next one. And then I can move this to progress. Okay. Next one. I don't remember who said they're going to reach out. Is it Yuan and
Yeah, I
Kevin?
reached out to a few folks, and some of them commented here, like from the VRM community and RMD and Kubeflow community. I believe we all probably need more time to discuss this one, because the last comment is from 17 hours ago, so we may want to keep this discussion running for a little bit.
Yeah, I think I reached out to Vara to just talk about their usage of NFS type of file systems within AWS. I think like he suggested few of the SLOs they want to follow for notebooks or for distributed checkpointing or for distributed inference here. I hope that might be helpful for all of us.
Okay. So what's the next step? Your suggestion, Yuan?
I would say take more time to review the comments, because I haven't had a chance to review all the
Oh, I
comments yet. This last one seems pretty long.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Then we can follow up maybe in the next meeting or in a comment here in the issue.
I think maybe, yeah, just one point I want to make. The question is like, do we want to standardize in terms of high performance file system as part of this AI conformance program? Because from my understanding, Kubernetes doesn't have any solutions out of the box. And different cloud providers have its own solutions. So the question is like what will be our recommendations here?
So this one is somewhat similar to the other ones in the accelerator, that the focus is on DRA, and for this one, the focus is on a standardizing on a API, which is the storage class. But
So I
this
guess,
yeah, this is again aspirational, because I know that a lot of the AI workloads are probably just calling the cloud API directly. We have another hand. Jeff?
Yeah, maybe we need to, with these, especially if the aspiration is towards must at some point, with these be a bit more like what we did with the cluster autoscaler, that if available, right? Because if your infrastructure doesn't even have this feature, making it a must for conformance kind of, not everyone has this use case. Not everyone has use cases where they really need this. But we want, if you have this feature, for it to be exposed by, in that case, DRA, in this case, storage class, right? But if someone has an infrastructure that doesn't even offer this feature, we would not want to exclude them, right?
Yeah, and to add here, this, how do you test this? What is high performance? If we're ever to go to something like a must, what does high performance mean? How is that testable? And how do you get people to agree to that being high performance? Some of those things make this difficult, at least in its current wording, to, be on the path, I think, to something like a must.
Yeah, this one is like very opinionated in my opinion. Like, how do you define large scale, right? So different people have different use cases, and large today may not be large tomorrow. Yeah, and not everyone will need, like, if this is not a requirement for everyone or for most of the use cases, then having it be a potential must in the future may be too much to ask. Yeah, again, I have to read the details, but just like the general feeling towards this kind of requirement.
Yeah, I think high performance storage is required for some certain types of AI workloads, especially for the larger customers who are not just running small AI workloads on their cluster. But I also don't want to turn this into a benchmarking thing, because that would not be the goal of what AI conformance or conformance want to achieve. So maybe we can discuss offline to see how maybe there are some alternative way to capture the aspiration goal or direction that we want to go for this one.
So I think, yeah, I think overall the idea of making storage class API conformant with those file system makes sense. I think in terms of usability, this is very important for many different use cases, including distributed checkpointing, including all of those batch inferences and interactive workloads. I guess the differences would be that in how Kubernetes managing volumes is fully abstracted and fully so it doesn't provide any opinionated way to managing those volumes. And from my understanding, as of now, storage class provides sufficient capabilities to deploy already high performance file systems. So the question, do we want to improve the API, or what should be our end goal here?
Yeah, I think the goal is to improve the API. I know that there are some frictions in the CSI, so maybe this could influence the storage for how we can improve that for AI, because our end goal is to make sure that Kubernetes is great for AI.
So maybe then I guess identifying gaps in CCI drivers and storage classes API would be a good next step for us. Maybe to talk to GCP or AWS folks or any other vendors to see how they deploy those high performance file systems, and so we can gather the any requirements from them.
Yeah. Okay.
Rita has a comment.
Yeah, Rita.
Yeah, I'm just listening. It does feel like we're trying to make sure that storage class is the interface that people use, right, when they interact with these CSI drivers or storage solutions, I guess. I'm just wondering, like, why is this AI specific? If that's the goal, isn't that applicable to all storage solutions? Like for anyone who's using storage, right? It's not just AI.
So from my go for Janet. I will add my points here.
Yeah, I think this is I would say that a lot of the requirement from AI workloads is also applicable to
The
other
general,
types of workloads.
yeah,
But the use case came from, yeah, I think the use case came from some of the AI heavy customers. They are looking for a way to, they are using high performance storage. That's where this is coming from. And then I see that a lot of them are not using it in a Kubernetes way. That's why I think that maybe we can standardize on this using the Kubernetes API. But eventually, this could become part of just Kubernetes conformance
right.
eventually.
Right. Where I'm getting at with this is if that is the long-term goal, then maybe it's not special to high performance storage solutions, right? It's generic. So then maybe as part of AI conformance, we can say like, hey, if you are offering a storage solution, it should be exposed via storage class. Then that will get rid of the ask like, oh, how do we know if it's high performance or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And Andre, do you have something?
I think just to answer your question, Rita, I guess some of those requirements which might be work for non-AI workloads doesn't work for AI workloads. For example, if you just use EBS or any sort of disk plug into your pod, right? Or let's talk about NFS type of file system when you want to access the file system between multiple pods. So some of those disks, some of those NFS type of file system must be high performant because you want to decrease latency, synchronize your checkpointing, or for example, if you're talking about Jupyter notebooks, your data should be synchronized between different instances, where it is training, inference, or your notebooks or kernels, etc. And which means some of those requirements might not be applicable for other type of workloads we run on Kubernetes, where there's databases or whether there's any other type of services we run. That is why I think there are some differences compared to other type of workloads. I hope that makes sense.
I think what Andre is saying makes sense. I only think that we need to make it somehow conditional, like Rita said, like an if, because if you don't have this use case or if your platform doesn't have this type of storage, are we then saying you cannot run AI workloads?
Yeah, I think
because we're very training focused right now in this conformance program, and there is a lot of AI end users and in the ecosystem that are almost only doing inference. And they also want a conform platform. Right? So if you make it super specific, we're excluding people.
Yeah, just on this, I guess probably the things we should agree where storage classes and CCI drivers make sense for everyone, and whether we should put as requirements for everyone who require to have these high performance file systems, similar to what we discussed before with TRI drivers. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, and for many people who are doing this, say on-prem or doing AI out at the edge, if it's high performance and the hardware is supplied by a customer and it's a vendor providing the software, the performance of that isn't even controlled by the platform itself. It's ultimately controlled by the customer who's installing it. And so how would you even deal with marking something as even high performance in those kinds of use cases? It's kind of the difference between public cloud, where maybe you've got a lot of control over the equipment in the whole pipeline. And then, people who are doing on-prem work with customers where the platform itself doesn't actually control all of those bits. And so we have to keep that in mind when we do that kind of separation.
So I think like from my point of view, if we kind of like eventually create this tool must, we should add this if applicable perspective, because I agree that probably for some use cases it might not be needed at all,
Yeah.
especially on edge. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to be mindful of adding the conditional requirements, because I think for now, the conditional requirements we have is mostly around things that aren't specific about AI workloads. For example, auto scaling. If you don't have auto scaling, then having it to support auto scaling GPU doesn't make sense for some platforms. But for this one, the high performance storage is indeed relevant to AI workloads. But I'm trying to think about how does the on-prem cluster work in this situation for our goal, because we want to make sure that it's the AI workloads is portable across different platforms. But if for on-prem, the customer manage their clusters themselves, how do they ensure that this is portable? Are they responsible for everything that they have in the cluster? Matt, do you have more input on that?
Well, I mean, if it's a customer doing things on premise, it really depends on where the platform sits. If they're just providing, a platform designed for AI with certain AI capabilities, and the customer runs and picks their own AI workloads, right? And it very likely may not be training in these cases. Then the customer is responsible for their own workloads that they're bringing, right? Because that's going to change over time. They may develop some of them in-house at a company, but they're grabbing an overall platform that helps them run those things, right? Maybe the platform is providing some of the base tools like VLLM or a job engine, things like that, all nicely integrated with Kubernetes. They get all of that from the platform, and then they bring their own unique independent workloads for it. Or maybe they're bringing a full stack that is end-to-end ready, and they're just using it. There's going to be a lot of variation out there in the use of these AIs, and they'll control the platform, but a lot of times it's going to come, and run on different hardware from different companies. So one person, company that provides, say, that stack that lets them run, that's got Kubernetes and some basic AI tools, it could run on different hardwares from HP or Dell or somebody else, and they may have different configurations of that based on deals the customer worked out. It's not a full controlled platform.
Maybe what it boils down to is that Kubernetes conformance is always a software conformance program, right? We cannot build a program that does hardware conformance by definition, because we're building it around software here, right? The platform that we're talking about is always something that is software. For some vendors, it might be highly integrated, but for a lot, it's not, right? And what we always also with upstream KDS conformance we do is we're testing the software setup and the configuration for conformance, and we're not testing underlying hardware, right?
Right. Thanks for the input. Any more comments about this one? I think we can move on to the next one, and then perhaps we'll come
I
back
think
to.
maybe, yeah, sort of interjecting. Maybe just one more question to Matt. Like, so when you say that probably customers will decide what kind of AI workloads they're going to run, do you still need to ensure that your platform cover broader spectrum of workloads, where it's inference, training, data processing, etc.? to support all those use cases? Or you think like in terms of offering this as a platform for customers, it can, cover only one aspect for the broader spectrum of workloads?
I haven't really thought about this yet. So any comments that I have are going to be kind of on the fly. I think there's going to be lots of cases where your platform is really just only doing AI workloads. But I also think that there's going to be times where you're going to have other things running alongside of it, maybe even in support of it, right? Like you might have security tooling or other things that run in the cluster alongside that workload to perform some other means in support of it. Or you might have large shared clusters that you've got a bunch of AI workloads on and a bunch of other workloads on, and your system has to schedule it. I think you're going to run into cases where you have all of the above, but I haven't seen enough to see what's really happening yet.
Yeah, because even for AI workloads, right? I mean, there are a lot of users and platform providers who separating Kubernetes configurations for inference versus training, like batch
Yep.
versus inference. So the question would be like, while we're developing those conformance requirements, I think we discussed it before, but do we want to ensure all of them cover broader spectrum workloads? And the platform providers must kind of serve broader spectrum of AI workloads, which means like if some of those platform providers, if they only want to do inference, which is super important these days, like do we say they're not for conformant in that case?
Yeah, I don't think we could say they're not conformant unless we say the conformance is just AI training conformance. I think you have to be much more specific and not have a general AI conformance on that, because you're going to have inference, you're going to have training, you're going to have, large clusters doing large inference and large clusters doing large amounts of training, the order of tens of thousands of nodes in those clusters. And you're also going to have AI platforms running out at the edge in physical locations like factories, and you're going to have a much smaller hardware footprint that's fixed and doesn't auto scale and may have multiple workloads in that cluster. And so I think in AI there's such a variety that it's hard to say there's one pattern. And if we lock the conformance to just one pattern of it, we probably need to be more specific than to say it's just AI conformance, because AI is such a broad category.
Rita?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, like, I think most of these requirements that we're talking about, I think the goal is to ensure the vendors are actually offering these features that users can opt in, right? Like we're not talking about enabling by default. We're talking about having these toggles where if users want to use it for, again, training, they're welcome to just enable that feature. But if they don't want to, they don't need to opt in and they can just bring whatever other solution they want. I think the goal of the AI conformance is, do we offer these to the customer by default such that they can opt in, right? I think that's the goal, not to say we need to turn on all these for the customers without them agreeing to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, plus one to that. And also, this is also why the AI conformance covers more than just training or inferencing, and your cluster can provide all those functionalities, and users can just choose the ones that fits their use case. They don't have to use all of the features that's available, but being able to provide all the features that are conformant to AI workloads makes it easy to move from one platform to another, or reuse the same setup across different platforms.
Yeah, I think like the only kind of challenge that we're gonna have with that, I agree with all the statements. That definitely makes sense. And I think we previously agreed we're not gonna have a profiles for this AI conformance, like inference profile, training profile, etc. I just worry that we will end up with that some of those very, very optimized platforms for inference, which don't cover the broader spectrum of conformance and don't want to do it, become unconformative because we have establishing these musts for them to say, if you want to offer this as a platform for AI workloads, you have to kind of support variety spectrum of all of those pieces that we talk about. Which probably makes sense. I mean, for long term, like if we end up with improving Kubernetes core API, I think this is all we want to have. Just wondering like how platform providers will end up with that. If they maybe only want to focus on inference, and this is their main goal to solve. Anyway, yeah, maybe we can move on here.
Thanks for the discussion. We have 5 minutes. I think we can try this one. This one has a +1. This is about image pool optimization. The should requirement is about facilitating faster pulling of larger container images. This is mostly for the case when you're pulling image for AI workloads, it usually takes a long time, and this is trying to tackle that problem. And then I'll give folks a few moments to read it. And then slowly scrolling down, there's a comment about +1 to this. And Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with this one in theory. I do think that the image streaming stuff is kind of a little bit all over the place. Like, not exactly sure. Like, we don't have anything we recommend from the Kubernetes community about how to actually do this. It's all kind of done through container runtimes that decide which standards they adopt. So I know in Signode, we've talked a little bit about having like a working group to kind of maybe define the experience for this in tree a little bit better. But I don't think that work has really started.
Yeah. I think maybe that's also related to the discussion about the graduation criteria from a should to a must. At least there should be some concrete solution for a should requirement that can be adopted by the platform for a should requirement to graduate to a must. And I think the solution doesn't have to live in Kubernetes core, because this is part of the AI conformance is part of CNCF. So potentially, if there are other solutions in CNCF, that could be adopted as well.
Yeah,
There should be CNCF though, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say is like I do see a lot of cloud vendors offering these solutions, but it is a little unclear to me how these solutions could be offered on-prem. And so like that's my only like I know I have an idea of how like I mean I've seen the docs around Google and AWS about how they do this, but I don't know if it's all open sourced.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've done this on premise too. For end users, it's hacky. Let's call it. I mean, it's OCI compliant. It's nice because there has been things like distributing OCI images peer to peer and bringing them to nodes and caching them close to where pods would start without all these streaming things. But there is no like, oh yeah, this is a CNCF project that solved this for me.
So the implementation that you're talking about is specific to the platform. It's not a portable solution across other platforms. I see.
I mean, there is portable solutions across providers, across infrastructures. However, they're not standardized for CNCF projects. At least not all tools in that tool chain, I think, are CNCF projects.
All right. So I think we're at time. Let's follow up the discussion in the issue or in Slack. And folks, please come to this process doc to make your suggestions about how we should move forward with the process. And then we can bring it to SIG architecture and SIG testing for their final review. All right. Thanks, folks. See you.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Thank you.